They told my son there was no room at the table. Not a seat, not a plate, not even a folding chair, near the trash. My name is Lauren. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever watched the people you love reject your child, like they were never part of the family to begin with? It was Christmas Eve, and I was in scrubs, elbow deep in back-to-back emergencies at County General. Another 16-hour shift. Another holiday traded in for duty. But I wasn't worried. My parents had promised they'd take care of him, that he'd feel the warmth of family, even if I couldn't be there. He texted me once. Just once. Mom, they said there's no space left at the table. I'm headed home. I thought it was a joke, until I checked the time. 6:43 p.m. Dinner had just started, and my only child, my gentle, quiet, always smiling son, was driving alone through the cold, heading back to an empty house with no lights on and no leftovers waiting. I stared at my phone, numb. I called. No answer. I called my sister. She picked up. Loud laughter in the background. She said, "Oh, come on, Lauren. He's 16, not 6. He can handle one dinner alone." Then hung up. No apologies. No hesitation. Just cruelty. Casual, cold-blooded cruelty. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with him on the couch, microwaving store-brand mac and cheese while he pretended it didn't hurt. But I saw it. In the way he didn't meet my eyes. In the way he said, "It's fine," before I even opened my mouth. So I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I poured us 2 glasses of sparkling apple cider and told him, "Don't worry, baby. They'll remember this Christmas." But not for the reasons they think. Because sometimes revenge doesn't look like shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it looks like a quiet mother printing something important at 2:12 a.m. And the next morning, they open their front door to a letter taped right to the wreath. By 8:45 a.m., my phone started blowing up. By 9:02, my sister was screaming down the line. And all I said was, "Oh, you opened it. Good." Because the letter wasn't just paper. It was a mirror. And when they read it, they didn't see words. They saw every ugly truth they'd ever tried to hide. Let the holiday games begin. The letter was exactly 3 pages long. Typed, calm, deceptively polite, and signed with one name, mine. It started with a memory. Christmas 2012. You told my son he was too young to help decorate the tree, then handed the star to Lily's toddler because she was more festive. Then another. Christmas 2016. You forgot his name on the gift tag. You wrote to Lauren's kid in Sharpie. And another. Christmas 2019. You made him take the photo, then posted, "Family all together," without him in it. I wasn't emotional. I was surgical. A decade of small betrayals, lined up like X-rays. Then came the second page. Legalese. Clean and brutal. Effective immediately. The deed to the family cabin in Vermont was being transferred into my name only, per the quiet refinancing I'd handled last March. The one they all signed, laughing because I was the responsible one. Effective immediately, the $12,000 property tax I'd paid for their main house, the one they still hadn't reimbursed, would be called in. With interest. Effective immediately, the family vacation fund I'd bankrolled for 8 years straight, canceled. Refunds processed. Cards reversed. And at the very bottom, please do not contact my son until you learn how to treat him like a human being. Until then, consider yourselves blocked. I didn't answer their calls that morning. Or the dozen voicemails. Not even when my sister yelled, "You're being petty," over one night. Because they still didn't get it. It wasn't one night. It was every Christmas they chipped away at his spirit. Every dinner he sat at the kids' table while their kids had private bedrooms and applause. Every sideways glance when he asked to say grace. Every forgotten birthday, every secondhand gift still in the plastic. I gave them a choice for years. To see him. To really see him. Instead, they saw my child as a placeholder. An afterthought. An obligation. But now, they were starting to see him as something else. As the reason their little empire, their cozy traditions, their shared beach trips, their photo-perfect holidays, was falling apart because I wasn't just withdrawing money, I was withdrawing myself. And in doing so, I took the bridge with me. And bridges don't beg to be crossed again. They collapse quietly and leave those on the other side stranded. By New Year's Eve, the silence was louder than any explosion of fireworks. They hadn't seen it coming. Not the letter, not the fallout, definitely not the court notice that arrived on December 30th, informing them that the joint trust fund Dad set up for the grandkids had a new trustee me. They tried to call my bluff, but I wasn't bluffing. For years, I played their game, funded their flights, split their bills, bought matching pajamas for family photos, only to watch them crop my son out of the frame every single time. Now they were scrambling. My dad sent a voice note. "Lauren, you're being overdramatic. Let's talk this through like adults." My sister wrote a message so long, it needed to be sent in parts. She called it a misunderstanding, said the table was just full, said her husband forgot to bring an extra chair, said I was letting my nurse stress cloud my judgment. But I wasn't clouded. I was crystal clear. I looked at my son, 16 years old, quiet, observant, already too used to being excluded. He said nothing through all this. Didn't ask me to stop. Didn't ask for revenge. But when I told him what I'd done, how I'd shifted every account they once relied on into a separate family trust under his name, he whispered one thing. "Thank you for choosing me." That's when I knew. This wasn't about revenge. It was about repair. Repairing the years I let them chip away at his confidence. Repairing the parts of myself that always stayed silent to keep the peace. Repairing the boundary between what I owed them and what I owed my child. Because blood may be thicker than water, but respect? Respect is the real currency of family. And they'd gone bankrupt. So I didn't just cut them off. I gave them a taste of what they gave my son. A holiday alone. No cabin. No calls. No cash. And when my sister posted a New Year's picture, it was different this time. No coordinated outfits. No matching mugs. No caption. Just 3 adults sitting around a half-eaten dinner. And an empty chair in the corner. Poetic, isn't it? How the people who never made room for him suddenly had so much space. They showed up at my door on January 3rd. No warning. No text. Just 3 knocks. Sharp, desperate, and familiar. I opened the door and found my sister standing there with fake humility stretched across her face, holding a pie. A pie. Like this was some kind of sitcom apology. Behind her, my parents hovered, Dad looking everywhere but my eyes, Mom clutching her purse like it held a lifeline. "We just want to talk," my sister said. I didn't invite them in. Instead, I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. My son was inside, safe, warm. This wasn't going to touch him. Not anymore. "We were wrong," my mom started, but he should have said something if he felt left out. I blinked. "He was 16, Mom. You're the adult. You're the family." Then I asked, "What exactly are you sorry for?" They froze. Because they weren't ready for that. They wanted an emotional outburst. Not a quiet demand for specifics. "You're being unforgiving," my dad said. "Family is family." I smiled. "No. Family is action. Not blood. Not tradition. Not last names." They looked at me like I was speaking a language they'd never heard. And maybe I was. The language of boundaries. The language of finally saying no more. I handed them a folder. Inside, the documentation showing I'd legally removed their names from every shared asset. Cabin. Trust. Vacation property. Gone. "I'm not doing this to be cruel," I said. "I'm doing this because kindness with no accountability is just enabling." My sister's mouth twisted. "But what about forgiveness?" I leaned in. "I gave forgiveness. Years ago. You called it weakness." Then I pointed to the car at the curb. "You can keep the pie. It's the only thing left you brought that doesn't harm." I turned, walked back inside. Behind me, my son stood in the hallway. He looked up at me and asked, "Are they gone?" I nodded. He exhaled. And in that moment I realized something. Sometimes protecting your child means becoming the storm, not the calm, not the healer, but the reckoning. And when love is real, it doesn't ask for a seat at the table. It builds its own. 2 weeks passed. No calls. No visits. Just silence. Bitter, hollow silence from the people who once never stopped asking for favors. But the town talked. Oh, they always talk. Especially when a nice family like mine suddenly cancels their annual winter retreat. Especially when their accounts freeze and their pictures vanish from the cabin's Airbnb listing. They spun stories, of course. My sister told her friends I was having a breakdown. My mom whispered I'd gone rogue after too many night shifts. My dad? He told the church I was just dealing with trauma and would come to my senses eventually. But no one mentioned the boy they'd forgotten. The boy who drove home alone on Christmas night with a smile still painted on just to protect me. They erased him from the narrative. Again.
So, I did something they didn't expect.
I wrote a letter. This time for the world. I posted it on my private blog. No names. No slander. Just truth. On Christmas night, my teenage son was turned away from the table where he should have been welcomed with open arms. He ate alone in a cold house while laughter echoed from a room he wasn't allowed to enter. This isn't about revenge. It's about awareness. Silence can look like strength, but sometimes it's just inherited pain. And I'm done passing that down. It went viral. Thousands of comments. Messages from strangers. Other mothers. Other daughters. People who'd sat beside trash cans, been cropped out of photos, or walked home from celebrations where their names were never said aloud. And somewhere in that digital crowd, they saw it too. Because my sister deleted her Instagram. My mom turned off her Facebook. My dad asked me to take the post down. But I didn't. Because truth doesn't come with a dimmer switch. Once you shine it, the shadows run. And maybe that's what they needed. To feel what it's like to be on the outside looking in. To finally understand what my son had endured. Not for one night, but every holiday, birthday, and family photo for 16 years. And if that truth made them uncomfortable,
good.
Growth always starts in discomfort. And I wasn't raising my son to make anyone else comfortable. I was raising him to know his worth, even if it meant burning down the table he was never invited to sit at. The fire had been lit, and not just online. At school, teachers pulled my son aside, not to pity him, but to say they saw him now, that they'd never realized he carried so much with so little complaint. He just nodded, quiet as ever. But when we got home, he handed me something. It was a Christmas card, drawn by hand, a sketch of our tiny living room, that lonely night, microwave meals and all. And across the bottom, in gold marker, best Christmas ever. I cried, not because it was the best, but because that boy, he had taken pain, abandonment, rejection, and still found something beautiful in the ashes. Meanwhile, the cracks in my parents' polished lives were beginning to show. I got a call from the Vermont town clerk's office. Apparently, my parents tried to file a dispute over the cabin deed. They were told, firmly, that all documents were airtight, legally sound, and fully executed. Then came the call from my sister's husband. They were declined for a mortgage pre-approval.
Why?
Because the line of credit they used for years under my name had been revoked. Consequences. Real ones. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't storming their house. I was simply doing what they never expected, stepping out of the role they wrote for me. No longer the peacekeeper. No longer the dependable doormat. I was the mother of a boy who deserved better than their traditions of conditional love. And the most painful part? They still didn't get it. They kept calling it a feud, a rift, something fixable. But it wasn't. Because this wasn't a disagreement. It was a reckoning. A closing of accounts, emotional, financial, generational. They'd mistaken my silence for acceptance, my reliability for permission, and my kindness for compliance. But the truth is, kindness is not the absence of boundaries. It's the courage to protect what's sacred. And this year, the only thing sacred was my son's peace. No more table scraps. No more, maybe next year. No more begging for a seat in rooms we helped build. This time, we weren't knocking on their door. We were locking ours. 3 weeks after the letter, the final shoe dropped. A certified envelope arrived from my father's accountant. It was a desperate attempt, a poorly worded offer to revisit arrangements regarding the family estate. Translation? They realized just how much they'd depended on me all these years. The cabin maintenance? That was me. The accountant's retainer fee?
Me.
Even the prepaid funeral plan for both my parents? That was my signature on the check. They never noticed, because I never asked for applause. I just did it, quietly. But now, the silence was working against them. They begged for meetings, mailed apology cards, one even written in my mother's handwriting, shaky and uncertain. And for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a stillness I'd never known. Peace born from clarity. Because forgiveness doesn't always come with reconnection. Sometimes it comes with release. So I wrote back one last time. A single sentence. You cannot ask to inherit the fruits of love you never watered. No signature. No warmth. Just truth. That same night, I took my son out for dinner. A real dinner. Linen napkins, soft jazz, sparkling cider in real flutes. He wore a shirt he picked himself, a little wrinkled but perfect. As we waited for dessert, he looked around and asked, "Why are people looking at us?" I smiled. They're not used to seeing peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. He grinned. And for the first time I saw it. He wasn't just healing. He was glowing. Because he had finally been shown what it meant to be chosen. To be protected. To be seen. Not tolerated. Not accommodated.
Seen.
And in that moment, I realized something I wish I'd known years ago. We waste too much time trying to fit into families that only love versions of us that keep them comfortable. But real love, fierce, unconditional, inconvenient love, doesn't ask you to shrink. It asks you to stand. And that night, across from me, my son stood taller than I'd ever seen. Not because of revenge, but because I finally made space for him, where no one could take it away. February came, quiet and gray. But in our home, something had shifted. My son laughed more. He asked questions again about colleges, about road trips, about life. He even taped his drawing, "The Best Christmas Ever Won," on the fridge like a badge of honor. We were building something, not out of spite, but out of truth. Out of the wreckage of people who once claimed to love us, but only ever loved their version of silence. Then one morning I got an email from the local community center. Subject line, "Holiday volunteer thank you." They were thanking my son. He'd signed up on his own, quietly, to serve meals on Valentine's Day to people who had nowhere to go. I stared at the email. Tears filled my eyes. He didn't just survive what they did. He grew from it. He turned absence into empathy, and cold shoulders into open hands. That night, I sat him down, told him the whole truth. How I used to make excuses for them. How I silenced myself just to be invited. How I confused proximity with love. And how that confusion ended the moment they closed the door on him. He didn't say much. He just nodded. Then said, "It's okay, Mom. You made sure I didn't carry it forward." And that was everything. Because cycles don't end in explosions. They end in choices. And I chose to end ours the moment they chose a holiday photo over a human heart. I've learned that not everyone who shares your blood is your family. And not every door deserves to be kept open. Some must be locked. Some must be walked away from. And some must be burned down, so that your child can see that love doesn't beg. It stands. It protects. It says, "Not my son, not this time." And it rebuilds, not with tradition, but with truth. So no, they'll never sit at my table again. But every time my son laughs, every time he holds his head higher, every time he chooses kindness even after cruelty, that's the justice. That's the revenge. And that's the legacy I leave behind. The laughter wasn't loud. That's what made it worse. It was soft, controlled, meant to be cruel only to me. Girls like her, Adam's father said, swirling his wine with contempt, they don't marry for commitment. They marry for comfort. A few guests let out awkward chuckles. Some looked away. Most pretended to keep eating. My hands were still in my lap, fingers curled so tight I could feel my nails pressing into my skin. I hadn't touched my food. Adam leaned forward with a grin, a smug, practiced smirk, and said, "She went from poverty to pearls in weeks. Not bad, huh?" Laughter again. This time it stuck. I felt it in my teeth,
My chest.
my bones. Even his mother smiled, as if this was all just light teasing. Something I should take as a joke. As if I was lucky to be sitting there, surrounded by crystal, white linen, and a family that never believed I deserved the seat I was in. My throat burned, not from shame, from restraint, because I could have screamed. I could have thrown the champagne in his father's face, slapped the smirk off Adam's lips, stormed out like a scene in a bad soap opera. But I didn't. Instead, I stood up slowly, straightened my dress, took the ring off my finger, and placed it carefully, silently, on the edge of the plate in front of Adam.
Gasps.
Whispers. A fork dropped to the floor. But I didn't hear any of it. I was already walking. No apology. No speech. No breakdown. Just silence. And then the click of my heels on marble as I left behind the most expensive humiliation I'd ever been gifted. I didn't look back.
I didn't need to.
I already knew what their faces looked like.
Shocked.
Embarrassed. Still trying to compute that the girl they thought they owned had just walked out of their perfect little performance. I didn't give them the dignity of a scene. I took mine with me. My name is Jasmine Brooks. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because the night they mocked my worth was the night I rewrote their legacy. Let them say I was a gold digger. Let them spread the story that I couldn't handle a joke. Let them lie. Because soon, the world would know the truth. Not just about who I was, but about what I became after that night. And, trust me, they should have never handed me that microphone made of shame. They should have never given me that silence. Because I was about to turn it into thunder. You learn to make yourself small when the world around you tells you your dreams are too big. My mother was a seamstress, proud, soft-spoken, and tired. She raised me in a one-bedroom apartment above a nail salon. The wallpaper peeled in corners. The fridge door needed a kick to shut. But the love, that place overflowed with it. I didn't grow up with pearls. I grew up learning how to stretch a dollar, how to find beauty in hand-me-downs, and how to keep your head high when everyone expected you to keep it low. I studied with a flashlight under my blanket while neighbors argued through the walls. I washed uniforms at night, worked diner shifts on weekends, and applied for every scholarship I could find. Every acceptance letter I got, I folded and placed inside an old shoebox under my bed. It wasn't pride. It was proof. Proof that I was clawing my way out. That's where I was when I met Adam. He didn't come from shadows. He came from spotlights. From a world where problems were solved with phone calls, where struggle was just a story they watched in documentaries. We met at a company gala. I was there shadowing the PR team from a fellowship program I nearly didn't get. He was there shaking hands and sipping scotch, a rising star at his father's firm.
I knew his type. Glossy. Charming.
Dangerous in the way thunderclouds are. Beautiful from a distance. Devastating up close.
But he noticed me.
Asked what I was doing there. Said I had interesting eyes. I rolled them. He laughed. Something about the way I didn't fall at his feet intrigued him. He pursued me.
Hard.
Flowers at work. Coffee sent to my co-working space. Dinners at places I couldn't pronounce. He said he admired my drive. That I was refreshing. I let him in slowly. Against my better judgment. My mother warned me. Jazz, rich men like that don't love women like us. They collect us. I thought she was being bitter. Turns out she was being wise. Adam was never overtly cruel. He was polished in his condescension. You're not like other girls from your background, he'd say, as if that was a compliment. He joked that he was rescuing me from ramen and roommates. I'd laugh at first. I didn't want to seem sensitive. He was just being playful, right? Until his mother invited me to brunch and brought a bag of her old jewelry, smiling sweetly as she said, "These should help you look the part." Until his father sat across from me during lunch and said, "So, what's the real plan here, Jasmine? Secure the ring, then the assets." I smiled, bit my tongue, paid for my own lunch. I wanted to believe Adam was different. That love could be louder than legacy. That maybe, just maybe, someone from privilege could see beyond the surface. But looking back, I think he loved the idea of me. The struggle made me a good story to tell. He liked how I looked beside him, like proof of his generosity, his open-mindedness. But he never wanted me at the table. He wanted me beneath it. Grateful. Quiet.
Owned.
And I was none of those things. Not for long. The first time I thought about leaving Adam, we were sitting at a rooftop bar, and he laughed at a story I was telling, not because it was funny, but because it embarrassed me. I'd told him how I used to sell handmade bracelets in high school to help with rent. His response? "God, babe, that's so cute." Like a charity case with ambition. He kissed my cheek like it was meant as a compliment. I smiled, but something in me cracked. He always did that, wrapped insults in ribbon. Called me adorable when I was being assertive. Called my goals cute when I dared to dream too loud. But the worst part? I let him. Because when you come from scarcity, sometimes attention feels like love, even when it comes with knives. He gave me gifts, trips, showed me off to friends who whispered things they thought I couldn't hear. She's got that glow-up story energy. She better be worth the brand rub. She's beautiful, in a grounded sort of way. I laughed along, pretended not to notice, told myself love meant compromise. But real love doesn't require you to erase yourself. And Adam was slowly trying to turn me into a portrait he could hang, not a partner he could stand beside. The red flags weren't waving. They were dancing in my face. Like the prenup his father casually slid across the brunch table one Sunday. "We just want to protect family assets," he said, smiling without warmth. You understand. I hadn't even accepted Adam's proposal yet. When I looked at Adam, waiting for him to defend me, he just shrugged. It's standard. Not a big deal. It was always not a big deal when it was about my dignity. When his mother offered to have her stylist give me a class polish before our official engagement photos. When his cousin whispered, "At least she'll raise hardworking kids." When Adam said, after I launched my small consulting gig, "Cute. You've got a hobby now." I told myself I was overreacting, that I had to adjust. That love required bending. But every time I bent, something sacred inside me snapped. I miss my old self. The girl who hustled. Who dreamed big without asking permission. The woman who didn't wait to be introduced, she arrived.
Fierce.
Focused. Adam didn't kill her. But he had me hiding her. Until one night, I stayed up till 3 a.m. staring at my business analytics. My client base had doubled in the past 2 months. My consulting packages were being shared in elite circles. A woman I'd helped land her first investor emailed me. "You don't just teach us strategy. You remind us we're worth something." And I realized something profound. I'd spent so long trying to fit into Adam's world. I hadn't noticed I was already building one of my own. That's when the plan started. I didn't need revenge. I needed release. I quietly separated my finances, took my name off shared accounts, moved client communications to a private line. And then, just 1 week before the engagement dinner, I got the call. A private equity firm wanted to invest in my company. 7 figures. Up front. And suddenly, I wasn't just the girl who rose from nothing. I was a woman holding everything. And that dinner? That was going to be their final show. And my quietest exit. I didn't want a scene. I wanted strategy. By the time Adam's family booked the venue for the engagement dinner, I had already put the wheels in motion. I opened a second business account in my name only, transferred the full down payment from the private equity deal there, discreetly. No social media announcement, no confetti.
Just cold, silent growth.
I changed the passwords on my business platforms. Revoked Adam's email access for security. He didn't notice. He never really paid attention to details that didn't benefit him. Instead, he paraded me around like a well-groomed secret, someone to show off at functions but never empower behind the scenes. I let him, because when you want someone to underestimate you, there's no better disguise than their own arrogance. I started keeping copies of every financial document, invoice, and client agreement in a private drive. Made sure every trace of my worth was no longer tied to his family's approval.
Even my wardrobe changed.
I stopped wearing the things his mother gifted me, those recycled blazers and handbags that whispered, "Be grateful we included you." I went back to my own style. Bold.
Sharp.
My roots, not theirs. Every move I made was surgical. Because revenge isn't loud. It's precise. The final piece was my exit plan. I secured a penthouse office in a co-working tower downtown. Paid 6 months in advance. Hired an assistant, a single mom who reminded me of my own mother's resilience. I even ordered a custom plaque for the glass door. Jasmine Brooks, CEO, Brooks and Bloom Consulting. It gleamed in silver. No pearls. Just earned polish. When Adam asked me if I was excited for the engagement dinner, I smiled sweetly. Thrilled. He kissed my forehead like I was a good girl. And I let him believe the illusion he so badly needed, that I was just the accessory to his legacy. But that legacy? It was already crumbling. Because in the week leading up to the dinner, his latest startup pitch failed. 3 investors pulled out. And one of them now funded me. He had no idea I was the reason they'd redirected capital. That my name, invisible in his world, had echoed in the rooms where money changed hands. He was too busy picking out napkin colors and dinner music. I watched him the night before the dinner as he practiced his toast in the mirror. "Jasmine is proof that love can lift someone up," he said with a smile. I nearly laughed. Love didn't lift me. I did. Love didn't build my business. I did. Love didn't walk through fire and show up with scars and dignity intact. That was all me. But I let him rehearse. Let him believe. Because the most beautiful part of walking away is letting them think they're holding you, right until you open your hand and reveal. You were never holding on to them. They were just passing through. And tomorrow night, they'd see exactly what happens when the woman they tried to shrink decides to grow, unapologetically, in silence, in strength, and on her own terms. The room was dipped in gold. Gold chairs, gold chargers, gold-trimmed name cards. Even the floral centerpieces glinted under chandeliers, like someone had ordered excessive wealth with a side of ego. I walked in alone. No +1. No apology. Wearing a fitted black dress that hugged like a secret and heels that clicked like punctuation. Heads turned. Not because I was overdressed, but because I finally looked like I didn't need anyone's approval. Adam greeted me with a practiced smile.
Wow.
"You clean up." I nodded. "I'm not here to be cleaned." He laughed. Thought I was joking. Of course he did. His mother air-kissed my cheeks like a socialite claiming territory. "Glad you wore something simple," she whispered. "Wouldn't want to outshine the family." Outshine? "Lady, I built a company while you built centerpieces." I took my seat. The speeches began. His cousin talked about how Adam has always had great taste. Even as a boy, he picked the best toys. The room chuckled. His father stood, champagne in hand, ego in full bloom. "We are so proud to welcome Jasmine into our family," he said. "She reminds us that with the right support, anyone can rise." Whispers. Laughter. Eyes shifting my way. Then he added, eyes gleaming. "Girls like Jasmine know how to upgrade their lives. From humble beginnings to pearls. Isn't that right, son?" Adam smirked. "She upgraded real quick." Laughter this time didn't just tingle, it cut. And Adam? He laughed with them. That was the moment. Not the insult. Not the dig. But the smirk. The betrayal wrapped in a smile. A man so comfortable letting me be the punchline. I stood. Quietly. Not rushed. Not emotional.
Just done.
I slipped the ring off my finger. The same ring his mother once said would look more believable after you tone up your hands. I placed it gently in front of Adam's plate. Gasps circled like perfume. I turned to his father. "Thank you for your generosity," I said, evenly. "And your clarity." Then I turned to Adam. He looked confused, like he'd lost his place in a script. "I was never yours," I said softly. "You just mistook my grace for gratitude." I looked around the table. Every smug face, every empty smile, every eye that had once looked through me now suddenly frozen. "This dinner didn't expose me," I said, lifting my chin. "It exposed all of you." Then I walked away. No tears, no raised voice, just the sound of my heels tapping through their silence. One guest stood to clap. Only one. A woman I didn't recognize, maybe someone's date, maybe someone who had been where I was once. But that single clap? It echoed louder than all their laughter. Outside, I took a breath. The city looked the same, but something had shifted. I hadn't just walked out of a dinner. I'd walked out of a narrative. And the girl they mistook for a decoration? She had just become the headline. It started with a text from one of Adam's groomsmen. "Yo, what happened last night?" Twitter's blowing up. I hadn't posted a word. I didn't need to. Someone at the dinner had recorded the moment. The father's speech, Adam's smirk, my ring landing on the plate like a mic drop in gold. By morning, the video had over 400,000 views. By lunch, it had a hashtag. Hashtag, she did not come to beg. People weren't just watching. They were feeling it. Women from around the world posted their own stories of walking out of rooms that try to shrink them. The comment sections exploded with quotes from my quiet takedown. "You mistook my grace for gratitude. This dinner didn't expose me. It exposed all of you." And Adam? He tried to fight the current. He posted a selfie that morning with a caption. "Sometimes people can't handle real love." The comments? Brutal. Real love doesn't laugh when you're being insulted. "She was too good for you, and you proved it. Bro, just sit this one out." His startup, the one he was courting investors for, lost 3 key backers in 24 hours. Not because of what happened, but because who I was finally came to light. Someone leaked my company's pitch deck. Then an article dropped. Jasmine Brooks, the tech strategist they called a gold digger. They told the real story. My story. The one Adam never asked about. My rise. My business. My plans to fund female-led startups in underserved communities. My 7-figure valuation. Suddenly, I wasn't Adam's ex. I was Jasmine Brooks, CEO, survivor, architect of my own success. His world unraveled. I heard from friends of friends that he went into damage control mode. "Jazz overreacted," he said in one interview. "It was just a joke." But the internet didn't forget. And neither did I. Meanwhile, Adam's father went silent. No statements. No apologies. Just a sudden cancellation of his speaking gig at a business summit the next week. Turns out, insulting women trying to escape poverty isn't great for public image. I didn't reach out. Didn't answer calls. Didn't open emails. Just watched as the pedestal they placed themselves on cracked beneath the weight of their own arrogance. I didn't need to destroy them. They did that just fine without me. And me? I kept building. I got invited to speak at a women's finance summit. All expenses paid. Topic? Walking out with wealth, when silence is louder than revenge. The irony? The keynote was supposed to be Adam's father. They replaced him with me. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about correction. They taught me I wasn't enough unless I was quiet, small, grateful.
But now?
I was loud in all the right ways. Visible in rooms they couldn't control. And I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Because once a woman sees her worth, she never forgets it again. And neither do the men who tried to laugh it away. There's something deeply powerful about being underestimated. They saw me as decoration, a girl upgraded from grit to gloss. They didn't see the spreadsheets behind my smile, the silent hustle, the nights I bled into code while they slept on silk pillows. But now, the curtain had lifted, and what they dismissed as cute ambition had turned into capital, headlines, and movement. The day my Forbes feature dropped, I was in sweats, sipping instant coffee, hair in a pineapple bun. The headline? She was called a gold digger at her own engagement dinner. Now she funds futures. They used a photo from the Women's Summit, me standing at the podium, hand midair, fire in my eyes. The article didn't focus on Adam, not even his father. It focused on the women I was hiring, the programs I launched, the fact that I'd taken every insult, every smirk, every "you're lucky to be here," and turned it into a consulting empire helping marginalized founders secure capital, confidence, and control. They wrote, Jasmine Brooks didn't walk out. She walked up, and she's not waiting for anyone to catch up. And just like that, I wasn't viral noise. I was a force. I launched a scholarship fund in my mother's name, the Myra Brooks Initiative for First-Generation Women in Tech. Applications poured in. I gave a TEDx talk called Silence Isn't Weakness, It's Strategy. I signed a book deal. The working title? Pearls Were Never the Goal. The irony? 2 of Adam's former investors reached out to me. One said, "We backed the wrong person. You were the brain the whole time." I didn't gloat. I just replied, "You finally read the fine print." Then came the email I didn't expect. From Adam.
Jazz.
I know I messed up. I was stupid. I see it now. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long time. There was a time I would have replied instantly. Maybe even apologized.
But now?
There was nothing left to say. He'd already said enough that night. And I'd already answered, with my heels, my silence, and the empire I built without needing his name. I archived the message. Not to ignore it. To preserve it as proof. Proof that the girl who once sold bracelets to help her mom now wore her own name like a crown. Later that month, a journalist asked me during an interview, "What would you say to the women who are still sitting at those tables, swallowing insults in silence?" I thought about that for a moment, then said, "You don't owe anyone your silence to be seen. Walk out if you must. But don't just walk away, walk towards something greater." The clip went viral. Again. Because truth always echoes louder than shame. And I had finally learned I was never meant to belong at their table. I was meant to build my own. Longer, louder, wiser, with no room for mockery, only momentum. It arrived in a cream envelope, thick paper, handwritten, no return address. Inside, a single note. "Jasmine, I watched your TEDx talk. You've become more than I ever imagined. Maybe I didn't know how to support someone like you. Maybe I was scared. Either way, I'm sorry. Adam." I read it once, then again, and then I folded it gently and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Not to save it, to bury it. Because closure doesn't come wrapped in apologies from men who clapped while your spirit was cracked open on fine china. It comes when you look at the woman in the mirror and no longer see the girl who needed them to see her. Closure is when you no longer need to explain why you left the table. It's knowing you built your own and filled it with voices that never made you beg for your place. The final shift came when I received a call from a national leadership summit. They wanted me as their closing speaker. The theme? From breaking point to blueprint. I said yes, not because I needed to speak, but because someone out there still hadn't found the words to walk away. And I wanted to be the voice that told her she didn't need to ask permission to rise. I stood at that podium in a silk suit the color of fire, looked out at hundreds of faces, some young, some weathered, all listening. I took a breath and began. Once upon a time, I was called a gold digger. They said I came from nothing, that I wore ambition like borrowed pearls. But they forgot. I never needed gold. I just needed space. The room was still. Then a roar. A standing ovation. Not for my past, but for what I'd built beyond it. Afterward, a woman approached me, late 30s. Soft eyes. She gripped my hand. "I handed back the ring last week," she whispered. "Because of you." And just like that, I knew none of it was wasted. Not the silence. Not the heartbreak. Not even the laughter that tried to break me. They all became brick and mortar for something real. Something worthy. Back home, I framed the Forbes article beside my mother's old sewing machine. She cried when she saw it. "You were always going to shine," she said, "even when they tried to dim you." I nodded, because I finally believed her. And on the wall of my new office, behind my desk, there's a quote, in gold letters, unapologetically large. She didn't upgrade her life. She created it. That's my legacy. Not revenge. Not the ring I returned. But the fire I carried out with me, and used to light the way for every woman still sitting in rooms that want to keep her small. They thought they broke me that night. But what they really did was show me who I wasn't. So I could finally remember who I am.